Welcome back to your favorite channel, your destination for the stories they don't want you to hear. Tonight, we're uncovering a shocking revelation that could change the Roloff legacy forever. For years, we've followed the drama at Roloff Farms, the family feuds, heartbreaks, and business battles, but what we're sharing tonight goes far beyond anything on camera. A secret insider report has surfaced detailing not only a devastating fire, but also what may have been a deliberate act of destruction and betrayal. The once iconic kids' castle, a symbol of childhood joy and family history, is gone, reduced to ash and twisted metal. Officially, it's called a tragic accident. But our sources tell a different story, one of hidden motives, quiet resentment, and possibly deliberate harm. The question now hangs heavy. Did Caryn Chandler set the fire to erase Amy Roloff's legacy from the farm? Tonight on Motion 24, we explore the truth they hoped would stay buried. Before we dive in, make sure to do 3 things. Hit that like button, subscribe to Motion 24, and turn on notifications so you won't miss updates on this explosive story. To understand the weight of what's allegedly been done, we must first remember what the castle meant. It wasn't just a place set, it was a world of its own. For over 20 years, it stood as more than wood, paint, and shingles. It was part of the Roloff family story, a living piece of their shared history. This wasn't a backdrop. It was where Matt and Amy built memories together. The castle wasn't a prop. It was the stage for 1,000 childhood adventures. It witnessed laughter during pumpkin seasons, birthdays, and countless ordinary moments that made millions love the Roloffs. It was where Zach and Jeremy had pretend battles, where Molly ruled as princess, and where Jacob found quiet peace. For Matt, the castle symbolized creativity and the promise he could give his children a unique world. For Amy, it was the view from her kitchen, a reminder of what she had built with love and care. The castle, the pirate ship, the whimsical bridges, these weren't just toys. They were expressions of a family's spirit, physical symbols of Amy's nurturing, Matt's imagination, and their children's wonder. But that story begins to darken. When something sacred is destroyed, it's not just wood that breaks, it's history, legacy, and love. Insiders told us that Caryn Chandler saw these buildings as reminders of a past she never created. She reportedly felt like an outsider on the property, a second chapter rather than the first. The castle, as a symbol of Amy and the life Matt built before Caryn, was a constant reminder she could never fully own. Caryn reportedly dreamed of a fresh start, a future for the farm that would surpass the past. To achieve that, the symbols of the past, including the castle, had to be removed. She has spoken about her vision for the farm, pushing for a more commercial, profit-driven direction. Upscale weddings, glamping, and adult-oriented tourism. All these ideas left little room for the whimsical, child-centered structures that tied the farm to the Roloff legacy. The castle was a literal and metaphorical roadblock. Sources suggest Caryn's frustration grew into a fixation. To realize her vision, she reportedly saw the removal of Amy's influence as necessary. On the night of the fire, the farm was quiet. Matt went to bed early, exhausted from a long day. Caryn stayed up, working on finances for the upcoming pumpkin season. She later told police that she saw a flicker of light in a window and that flames began climbing the castle. She claimed to have panicked, dialing 911 as the fire consumed the old timber. By the time firefighters arrived, the castle was already destroyed. The flames were contained before spreading to barns, but the beloved landmark was reduced to a heap of blackened rubble. In the aftermath, Caryn stayed close to Matt, comforting him and the children. She explained the fire as a tragic accident, blaming outdated wiring. To an outside observer, her story seemed reasonable. The castle was decades old, and electrical faults were plausible. But insiders question whether that explanation is the full truth. They suggest the fire may have been part of a deliberate effort to remove symbols of Amy's past influence and make way for Caryn's vision for the farm. While Caryn presented herself as distraught and supportive, sources claim her grief may have masked deeper motives. The destruction of the castle was more than a loss of wood and paint. It was a loss of family history. It erased a tangible connection to childhood memories, the efforts of Matt and Amy, and a piece of the Roloff shared story. For the children, it meant losing a playground full of memories. For Amy, it was a reminder of a past she helped create but could no longer touch. Caryn's vision for the farm emphasizes profit and modernization, but critics say it comes at the cost of preserving the family's legacy. Weddings, glamping, and commercial attractions replaced the spaces where generations of Roloffs played and laughed. The castle, once central to the magic of the farm, is gone, leaving questions about what will remain of the Roloff story for future generations. The incident has left the Roloff family and fans in shock. Social media is full of reactions, with many expressing sadness and disbelief. The castle wasn't just a structure, it was a symbol of innocence, imagination, and togetherness. Its loss highlights the tension between preserving history and chasing new ambitions, and whether personal motivations played a role in its destruction. Tonight, the story of the Roloff Castle reminds us that even in well-loved families and cherished traditions, conflict and ambition can have dramatic consequences. Buildings are physical, but memories, legacies, and love are fragile. Once destroyed, they leave empty spaces and questions that may never be fully answered. The fire, whether accidental or deliberate, marks a turning point for Roloff farms. It challenges the public's perception of the family, the farm, and the ongoing struggle between past and future. What will replace the castle? Will the new vision honor the legacy, or will it erase it completely? Only time will tell. For now, all that remains is ash, twisted metal, and the memory of what once was. The children, the family, and fans alike are left to mourn, to wonder, and to reflect on what was lost. Caryn's role, whether accidental or intentional, will continue to be questioned. The fire may have destroyed a building, but it also ignited debates about legacy, control, and the cost of progress. As we continue to follow this story, Motion 24 will keep you updated with every new development, every insider report, and every reaction from the family. What happened to the Roloff Castle is more than a fire. It's a story of dreams, ambition, memory, and loss. It's a story of a family navigating love, power, and the fragility of legacy. Matt's early work on the castle didn't follow modern building standards. Over the years, the wet Oregon weather could have caused minor issues. At first, there seemed no reason to ask more questions or assign blame. Caryn's explanation was simple and believable. She wanted everyone to think it was a tragedy, and that was her point. But even as the smoke rose from the ashes, small cracks in her story began to appear. According to our insider, it was her words, more than her actions, that raised Matt's suspicion. While comforting him, she reportedly said, "My darling, I know we're both devastated by this horrible incident. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Now we can have a clean slate. We can build something new, something that represents us." Matt had barely begun to process the loss when Caryn, supposedly within hours, started talking about building a new wedding pavilion or upscale glamping retreat on the castle's former site. She described it as an opportunity to update the farm, to create a new symbol for the future. Her words were meant to sound optimistic, but to Matt, they felt cold and calculated. Instead of mourning, Caryn appeared to be immediately thinking about business opportunities. Her reaction planted a small seed of doubt in Matt's mind. He remembered the night before. Caryn was awake, calm, and had the quick answer. She saw a blessing instead of a tragedy. The claim of defective wiring, which once seemed reasonable, now started to feel scripted. The rest of the Roloff family was grieving. Zach and Jeremy were devastated. They had grown up with that castle. To them, it wasn't just wood and paint. It was a piece of their childhood erased. Amy was also deeply affected. The turret that once peered over the treetops and reminded her of the family she had built with Matt was now gone. In contrast, Caryn's practical, forward-looking response felt out of place. Matt noticed it. He saw the real grief in his children's eyes, and the difference unsettled him. The explanation of defective wiring didn't sit right. As the builder of the castle, he had always been meticulous. Even if he sometimes cut corners, he made sure his children's buildings were safe. He remembered managing the electrical work himself, using heavy-duty outdoor wiring and special circuit breakers in the nearby barn. It didn't make sense that his work would fail so catastrophically. He knew the way electrical fires start. small smoldering spots that slowly spread. But the fire that destroyed the castle had been intense and explosive from the start. Sadness was now joined by a growing need for answers. Matt couldn't accept the story at face value. As a father and the creator of the castle, he had to investigate. He began to search the ruins personally, hoping to uncover any clues or remnants of the truth. The morning sun did little to ease the fear in Matt as he stood among the devastation. The air was heavy with the smell of burned wood, damp ash, and chemicals that seemed out of place. 30 years of memories lay in ruins, and the explanation of faulty wiring sounded weaker with every glance. Matt had experience with buildings and fire, but what he saw didn't match an accidental electrical fire. Insurance investigators and the fire department would conduct their formal analysis, but he knew they would miss the details only he could recognize. To protect his family, Amy, the children, and the legacy of the farm, he had to find the truth himself. His boots sank into the muddy earth as he moved through the debris. Caryn had tried to stop him. "Matt, honey, don't," she reportedly said, her voice full of urgency. "It's too upsetting. Let the cleanup crew handle it." But her tone felt more defensive than caring. Matt pushed past her, determined. On his own land, he became an investigator, not just a grieving father. He began carefully scanning the rubble. Electrical fires often leave telltale signs. They start in one spot, such as an outlet or junction box, and spread outward, leaving a V-shaped burn pattern. The heat is greatest at the origin, and the damage radiates from there. But Matt didn't see any of those signs. The fire didn't follow the pattern of a short circuit. Its destruction was too sudden and too extreme. Every piece of the castle's remains, every scorched board, told him something had been different this time. Something deliberate. Matt's grief, confusion, and anger combined into a determination to uncover the truth. He had to understand exactly what happened to the castle and whether the story he was being told matched reality. This investigation would take him deeper into the ruins, deeper into the mystery, and closer to uncovering a truth that could change everything he thought he knew about that night and about Caryn. Matt's investigation began slowly, methodically. Every charred beam, every twisted metal hinge, every scorched plank told him a story. He moved carefully through the ash, taking in the details that others might overlook. Small clues stood out. The way some wood had burned completely while adjacent boards were relatively intact, the areas where the fire seemed to leap unnaturally from one section to another. It didn't match any fire pattern he knew. Fires caused by faulty wiring usually start small, near an outlet or junction, and spread gradually. This fire had burned explosively from multiple points. It was almost as if someone had accelerated it. That thought gnawed at him. Matt remembered Caryn's behavior the night of the fire. Her calm, calculated response. Her insistence that it was a blessing in disguise, the immediate vision of building a wedding pavilion or glamping site in place of the castle. It all now seemed suspicious. Her grief had seemed convenient, almost performative. The children were still in shock. Zach and Jeremy wandered around the ruins, staring at what remained of their childhood. Molly, too, was heartbroken. The castle had been her kingdom, a space where she ruled as princess and dreamed endlessly. Now all of it was gone. Their faces haunted Matt, making him more determined. He couldn't let the truth be buried under smoke and lies. He began documenting the site with photographs and notes. He recorded every anomaly. Spots where the burn pattern didn't make sense, fragments of materials that seemed chemically altered, areas that were too blackened to be explained by ordinary fire. Each detail added weight to his growing suspicion. This was no accident. Matt decided he needed expert help. He reached out to a private fire investigator, someone who specialized in unusual and suspicious fires. When the expert arrived, Matt guided them through the ruins, pointing out the areas that didn't fit a typical electrical fire pattern. The investigator's brow furrowed as they examined the site, poking at debris and taking samples for chemical analysis. "This doesn't look like a short circuit," the expert said quietly. "Look at these points here. The fire seems to have started in multiple areas at once. That's highly unusual. And these chemical traces, they're not normally found in standard building materials." Matt's heart sank, but at the same time, relief washed over him. His instincts had been right. Something wasn't right here. Someone had set the fire, and he was determined to find out who. Back at the main house, Matt began piecing together the timeline. He reviewed security camera footage, texts, and any messages related to the night of the fire. One detail stood out. Caryn had been unusually insistent on keeping the children and him calm, encouraging him to believe the fire was just an accident and to focus on moving forward. She had been unusually precise about where the fire started and how it spread, almost as if she had already rehearsed the story. Matt decided to confront Caryn indirectly. He started asking questions about the planning for the farm's future, the new projects she had mentioned, and the castle's place in them. Her responses were practiced, often redirecting the conversation back to opportunity and business. Each answer chipped away at her credibility in Matt's eyes. Meanwhile, Amy had been informed about the fire. She was devastated but also suspicious. The children's reactions had already told her something was off. Together, Amy and Matt began to compare notes, reconstructing the events of the night. They noticed inconsistencies in Caryn's story, small details that didn't add up, timelines that didn't match, and statements that seemed intended to deflect responsibility. The private investigator returned with results from the chemical analysis. Accelerants had indeed been used in the fire. The evidence was clear. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately set the castle on fire. The shocking part was that the fire had been carefully planned to make it appear as a tragic accident. Matt's anger grew, not just at the loss of the castle, but at the betrayal. Someone had destroyed decades of family history, memories, and the very symbol of his children's childhood. And that someone, it seemed, had been right under his nose the whole time. He decided to gather more evidence before taking any legal steps. Matt meticulously collected charred wood samples, security footage, and witness statements. Every detail was documented, every anomaly logged. He also began speaking with neighbors who had been around the farm that night. Some reported seeing unusual movements near the castle before the fire. Others mentioned strange smells, chemical odors in the air, or fleeting glimpses of someone lingering near the building. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a troubling picture. The fire had not been a spontaneous event. It had been deliberate, methodical, and calculated. And the more Matt examined Caryn's behavior, both before and after the fire, the more it seemed to align with the idea that she had orchestrated it. Matt also noticed Caryn's reactions to media coverage. She was quick to speak about the fire in interviews, framing it as a tragic accident and highlighting the opportunity to rebuild. Her eagerness to control the narrative, combined with her immediate business-oriented thinking, added another layer of suspicion. She wasn't grieving in the way someone who had lost a beloved family structure would grieve. She was performing grief as part of a calculated plan. Amy, Matt, and the children began to process the loss together, but now with a shared sense of betrayal. What had once been a tragedy now had a face. A person who had taken advantage of the situation for personal gain. The family's grief turned into determination. They were not going to let the destruction of the castle go unanswered. Matt contacted his legal team, presenting the findings from the fire investigation and the inconsistencies in Caryn's account. They began preparing for the next steps, potential charges of arson and civil actions for damages. Every report, every chemical sample, and every witness statement was compiled into a comprehensive dossier. Meanwhile, the children tried to make sense of it all. Zach and Jeremy were angry. Molly was confused, and even Amy struggled with the idea that someone so close could betray them so profoundly. Matt reassured them, saying, "We will find out the truth, and we will make sure the people responsible are held accountable. This castle may be gone, but our family is not." The investigation continued for weeks. Authorities re-examined the site with Matt's evidence. Experts confirmed the use of accelerants and the unnatural pattern of the fire. Matt's careful documentation became the backbone of the case, and each piece of evidence brought them closer to the reality that Caryn Chandler had a motive and the opportunity. As the legal process began, Matt and Amy also focused on rebuilding, not just physically, but emotionally. They started planning memorials for the castle, preserving photos, videos, and stories for the children. They began discussions about how to honor the family history while moving forward with the farm's future. Through it all, Matt remained vigilant. He knew that uncovering the truth was not just about justice, but about protecting his children and preserving the legacy of the Roloff family. Every day, he revisited the ruins, spoke with experts, and meticulously reviewed every piece of information he could find. The emotional weight of betrayal and loss was heavy, but it also fueled Matt's determination. What had begun as grief turned into resolve, a commitment to uncovering the truth, protecting